We're going to get started in just a minute. Our host will be George Koster. He's going to be interviewing Ellen Callas and Marie Cartier from the San Francisco Mime Troupe about their new radio serial, Tales of the Resistance. We are very excited to have them here today, and we're just waiting for a few moments to make sure we've worked out all of our technical not difficulties, that everything technical is in order and that we have everyone in the room. We've got a great crowd here today. Laura Wennis, our host of Civic, is admitting people. Just to let you know, we will be accepting audience questions throughout the event. I will be feeding those to George, and he will ask them toward the end of the conversation. But if you come up with a question, feel free to put it in the chat at any point. We will see it, and we will keep track of it.
And if you all could please direct your questions to Lila LaHood. You might be able to see me on there, but if you could please direct them to her.
Yes. So, Daphne, what do you think?
You know, we have a good amount of participants, so I feel like, you know, unless you want to wait one more minute, maybe at 3:05, but we have a good crowd.
Okay, and everything's good with the streaming on YouTube? It looks like it. I see the symbol.
And then I'm just going to start recording right now. Okay.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our Public Press Live event. My name is Lila LaHood. I'm the publisher of the San Francisco Public Press. We are here today with George Koster, who is going to be our host for this event. He's going to be speaking with Ellen Callas and Marie Cartier of the San Francisco Mime Troupe about the premiere of their radio serial, Tales of the Resistance. Just to let you know, we will be taking audience questions during this event. Please put your questions in the chat and direct them to me, Lila LaHood. I will be feeding those to George, and we will address audience questions at the end of the event. If you have any other issues, you may also direct questions to me or to Daphne Magnawa, our Director of Membership and Community, who's also working on the tech side of this event. George, I'd love to hand things off to you and get started.
Thank you, Lila, and welcome everybody. It's going to be a great show. I'm going to first start off with having Ellen provide just a quick backdrop on the San Francisco Mime Troupe, which is going into its 61st year and has a very long history of performing in parks for free. So Ellen, give us a little background.
Okay, it's great to be here in the Zoom where it happens. The Mime Troupe, this is our 60th, I know, I had to say it. This is our 61st year of doing shows. This is the first time in our history that we haven't done a park show this summer. We first started doing outdoor park shows in 1962. And before that, when the Mime Troupe first started, it was started by R.G. Davis, and it was more of a performance, avant-garde performance art kind of thing, and then became more commedia oriented and physical comedy, and the first outdoor show was in 1962, and we've been doing them free in the parks ever since. First couple years we had trouble with the local authorities and were busted for obscenity, and from that there were a couple of benefits, and our then business manager Bill Graham had some benefit concerts and realized that it was more lucrative for him to go into being a concert promoter than into theater, but it was a win-win for everybody. So there we are.
Thank you. That was great. So now with COVID basically having everyone sequester themselves inside, especially now with a new resurgence, Mime Troupe had to turn and kind of pivot and take your creativity in a different direction. So Marie, I'm going to turn to you and have you kind of share with the audience what's the whole process of creating this radio serial idea?
Sure. So I think like with everything that's happened around COVID, there were various stages of denial. And first we thought, you know, maybe we can still do the park shows. Then it became maybe we have to push the park show back to an August opening rather than do it on the 4th of July. But we realized at a certain point that we were just going to have to make a decision about how to do something. And we couldn't then move forward with it. And, there's different options. You can do something like this over Zoom. You could do some sort of video art. But I think we were all drawn to the radio show because it really, based on the production capabilities we have and what we're interested as far as our artistic aesthetic, it seemed like the biggest opportunity to really do like a full production. Because, we don't really have video people in the collective. Like, we have my iMovie editing skills and not a whole lot besides that. And to edit something together where we're all in separate places, where we couldn't have our sets and our costumes and our props and that visual aesthetic that we're used to giving our audience, it just didn't seem feasible. So we turned to this idea of the radio play because we thought we actually do have a lot of audio capabilities. We have a great sound engineer, Taylor Gonzalez, shout out. He is working so hard right now producing this show. And we love the sort of playing with genre, and with radio plays, there's such an opportunity to play with genre. So that's kind of what we're going to give you this year, is like 4 different genres of radio plays in different forms.
And one of the wonderful parts about San Francisco Mime Troupe is that you try to each year do a wonderful kind of timely topics that are woven into your stories. So you have the 4 different genres, which, as I understand, is kind of the new, classic radio noir. There's a sci-fi, there's a horror piece of it. So can you talk a little bit about the topics? Because it's going to be 9 different, 9 episodes in 4 series with political comedy, audio plays, Broadway, that kind of stuff. So
yeah. So basically the structure of it is this story follows 4 different characters. Each character has their own episode and they have their own genre. And then each character will get 2 episodes, and then the final 9th episode will be where it all collides. So and that way we get to play with a bunch of different genres, but also we get to address a wider variety of issues. I mean, there's obviously so much going on in the world. We have COVID, we have the election, we have this massive uprising for Black lives. And then on the other side, we have this massive uprising of stupidity, for lack of a better term of it. It's just people like just refusing to wear masks and being anti-vaccine, and just, an uprising of stupidity, let's call it. And so that is one thing that's kind of exciting about doing these 9 episodes rather than the one play. I feel like we usually are able to pack in, like maybe we have a central issue and then we pack in a few other things. But this way we'll have the current protests around Black Lives Matter and police brutality are going to be woven into all of the episodes as sort of just the backdrop of what's happening, because that is the backdrop of our lives right now. That's what's happening, as well as COVID. But those things are also more or less prominent in different episodes. Like we have one character who's a nurse, for example. So her thing is really going to be more focused on COVID and the sort of commercialization of healthcare, and like how healthcare isn't accessible, and how once we're looking at treatments that are going to be so expensive for people and not accessible to people. So that's sort of the take we're taking there. We have another character who's a retired cop, and so there's a lot there around police brutality and sort of the role of police in our society. So yeah, we get to hit on a lot of things this year, which is pretty cool.
Plus, we get to do it in real time, which is really unusual for us, because usually we write the show and we can update little pieces of it, during the course of it, but we're writing this as events are unfolding, and that's really unusual and extremely exciting.
And so with the 4 topics, we'll be broadcasting it on 4th of July at 5 o'clock, and then it repeats at 5:30. And then again on Sunday morning, July 5th at 9 a.m., and then repeat again at 9:30. And they're about 25-minute episodes. And then your 4 topics. So the July 4th kickoff is Jade for Hire, which is your the mystery of the missing worker. I love that idea. They're the frontline worker. Then July 18th, 2 weeks later, you're going to kick off with novice nurse. It's Susie. Is that Terse?
Susie Terse, novice nurse Susie Terse.
Right, the price of infection. And then August 1st, 2 weeks later, you're going to kick off the fear of the dark, the good cop. And then, of course, August 15th, Dimension 2020, which is your sci-fi. It came from R&D.
There you go.
So Ellen, I'm going to turn to you because you've been in the collective for a while. Who's going to be featured in the wonderfully talented collective in these 4 different storylines?
Oh, well, again, one of the great things about this is because we can expand our pool to include a lot more than just the usual 4 or 5 people we have on stage these days. And so, but this time we have Michael Jean Sullivan, we have Marie is reading in, we have Felina Brown's directing and also acting, Lisa Hori Garcia, Keiko Shimasato Carrero, Taylor Gonzalez, the aforementioned collective member who's doing sound, Daniel Savio is doing the music. Who am I missing?
Did you say Marissa Ellison?
Marissa Ellison.
Almost Glick.
And Almost Glick, who
used to play George Bush.
Tweeted in from LA. So, yeah, so we're reaching out to our larger family as well, which is fun, you know, and it's a great way for us to connect because just like everybody else, we're in our houses, like, so this is fun.
Yeah,
it's actually been fun.
And I was going to say, like, Lisa, for example, recently had to move to Denver, or did move to Denver. And so, but she still gets to be in the show this year. So that's pretty cool that we can have her, even though she's in a different state.
You know, it's interesting too, because so much of what we do is physical comedy and such broad and visual. So doing this completely different form, I mean, we kind of figured that the world didn't need another Zoom theater piece by us. So this is great because we get to do this and kind of stimulate our audience's imagination as well. So it's been fun.
And then you'll be doing some audience kind of discussion pieces, I understand, as well. So between the 2 weeks, the San Francisco Public Library will be hosting a little discussion about, essentially audience members getting a chance to ask you questions about the storylines, the characters, etc. Can either of you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's our community engagement person, Kari Barclay, has been reaching out to local organizations that are doing work around the issues we're addressing. And I think it's particularly exciting because we are in this particularly revolutionary moment right now where things seem possible that didn't seem possible before. People have time to go to protests and to be involved civically more than they usually would. So I think we always try with our shows to like create enthusiasm and energy around the issues we're addressing. But the fact that we'll be since we have multiple episodes and we'll have a talk back for each episode, that's even more opportunity to sort of create connections between people and organizations, help educate people about what campaigns and things they can get involved with are, go deeper into the issues that might just be addressed a little bit in the shows. So that lineup is being worked out right now, but Kari's working really hard to reach out to different labor-related organizations, which I didn't mention before. We're also addressing like unemployment, obviously is a huge one. And
long list.
Yeah, the long list of things that are happening right now. He's working with like nurse and healthcare organizations, Black Lives Matter related organizations. So hopefully we'll get some really good discussions out of that through the public library, which is, I miss more than anything. It's my favorite public institution.
Well, and along with obviously the radio serials, you're also trying to bring back some of the wonderful, San Francisco Mime Troupe collective content. And could you talk, Ellen, a little bit about Freedomland streaming?
Yeah, Freedomland. Actually, it's great. We have this opportunity with the cooperation of Actors Equity which was afforded through, once again, our pal COVID-19. They are allowing us to run the complete show, to stream the complete show of Freedomland, which is a show we did in 2015 following Ferguson. And it's a great show. And it addresses all these issues that are continue to be with us, sadly. But having this opportunity, so that'll be streaming as of Monday the 6th for 2 weeks through the 19th. And you can go to our website and there it is. So it's wonderful because, again, we haven't been able to tour outside of our locale for a long time. So not only with the radio show, but with Freedomland, we're actually reaching beyond the neighborhood for the first time in a long time, which is really good for us.
And it's a really remarkable show in that by our head playwright, Michael Gene Sullivan, in that it addresses like the militarization of the police and the way they like invade the lives of people of color in a way that's like very angry and pulls no punches, but also has these moments of beauty and moments of like comedy and, you know, in a way that really only the mime troupe can do, in my opinion. So I'm really excited to get that back out there and also see how the discussion has sort of evolved since the uprisings around Ferguson, and how, you know, there were thoughts around reform back then, and now a lot of people are saying like reform is not an option. We have to look at defunding and abolition. So it'll be really interesting to see kind of like we intend to have some discussions around that as well, and like see how we're moving forward around this issue as well.
So then normally, Ellen, your all of the public free events that you do during your summer season, you have, you know, folks going around the audience with the proverbial hat in hand. How can all of our wonderful audience members here today and listeners on, you know, the station participate? How can people support the Mime Troupe's work?
Through our virtual hat. You can go to our website, www.sfmt.org, and there are a myriad of donate buttons there, so you can choose for one. Yeah, it's easy to do, and we definitely welcome donations. Honestly, you know, not being in the parks this year financially is we're taking a hit because we do depend on that. We offer free shows every year, but like we always say, the cost of free shows is expensive. So even doing this production is expensive for us in terms of outreach and paying people and technical stuff. So, you know, so yes, please support your local theaters. Are suffering right now, and a lot of the granting organizations are having to shift their focus to more direct human cost needs right now. And of course the arts suffer, but yeah, please do.
And another thing is you can still buy your Mime Troupe merch. The Mime Troupe store is still open, so you can get anything you want with the big red star on it, and we can mail it to you in a, you know, safe, socially distanced way. And we have all kinds of good stuff, so you can check that out on sfmt.org.
We have a summer's worth of inventory.
Yeah, all pretty much union made in America as well. So
wonderful. And if this is a success, which I believe it will be, just because radio theaters on the increase these days, and given lots of people's time spent wandering around the streets aimlessly listening to podcasts, this could be an ongoing wonderful show format for the San Francisco Mime Troupe. Yeah,
yes, exactly. While you're cooking dinner, while you're Marie Kondoing your house, whatever, you just need your headphones and we'll be there with you.
Really, in your very own home or on the street as you're walking around. Yeah, it's great. We hope to make this a regular feature. If people really like it, we certainly do.
All right, so we're going to turn to questions and answers, but just remind everybody, but tune in to KSFP this coming 4th of July at 5 o'clock and at 5:30. Again, July 5th at 9 o'clock and at 9:30. And then that same schedule will be repeated 2 weeks later on KSFP. And you could also go to San Francisco Public Press to stream it live, if you will. There's a great little player there if you can't get it on your radio. And so I'm going to throw it back to Lila here, and we can kick off with questions. And no, we don't have any questions at the moment. So actually, you can also tune in to at 4:30. I think Mel's going to be broadcasting the interview I did with Michael Sullivan about the Mime Troupe and how COVID-19 impacted the Mime Troupe. And that'll be being broadcast on 4th of July at 4:30. It's also a really great interview. Michael gets into a little bit of the history, but more importantly, to Ellen's point, the importance of people actually supporting all of our local artists. I think Ellen had kind of mentioned a little bit with the union. It's difficult for arts and performance organizations like the San Francisco Mime Troupe to charge for live streaming shows on Zoom, etc. So it's the virtual hat again. So I'm going to see if we have...
Yeah, I think people are being shy. Please come and ask questions. Or I don't know. I mean, Ellen and Marie, do you have questions for the audience, things that you would like to poll them about?
Well, I have something. Go ahead, Ellen.
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
It's that Zoom thing.
Well, I was just going to add to something George said about the fact that arts organizations are suffering right now. And it's definitely true. Like, I think we've all seen, like, being sheltered in place, like how important arts are in our lives. Like, even if it's like a Netflix show that I'm pretty sure was written by an algorithm, that's still art. And I think that that's one thing that I hope we get out of this, is that, like, how important arts are and how exciting it will be to be in a theater with a live performer again when that happens. But I also think that part of, like, the structure of the Mime Troupe has actually led us to be more resilient in this situation. Since we're run as a collective and we don't have a lot of staff members, we would love to have more staff. We would. But currently, like, basically being in the collective is like a volunteer position because we get prioritized for the work that comes up, but the, day-to-day meetings and stuff, that's basically like a volunteer role. So I think in this case, it's made us very resilient because, like, when all this shifted, like, we were all still here. Like, we didn't have to lay anyone off because we're all here because we really care about the organization. And though we should have more funding and we should have more, like, salaries for collective members, like, I think it really showed the strength of our organization that we were able to all, like, still be here and, like, pull together and come up with something that artistically is exciting and compelling.
So we do have a couple questions, actually leading right into needing more help, even though everyone works for the love and passion, if you will, of the collective. Someone asked, how does one become a trooper?
Blood, sweat, and tears.
The desire, right now it's I'd say hands-on, but there are no hands-on. So, but usually you can volunteer. You can take workshops. We can always put people to work. And by sheer perseverance and grit, people that have that kind of patience and talent and desire and passion is the key word. You usually manage to find your way in. But
I think
you can go to our website and there's places to volunteer, and even these days virtually, we can use virtual help. We'll figure out a way.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways in. I mean, we have our summer internships, which is obviously pretty reduced this summer. We also do our youth theater project every spring, and that's our it's a free after school program for high school aged youth in San Francisco, and they create a show about what they care about. And that may not seem like a way into the company, but our much revered audio engineer, who we have mentioned, Taylor, he started in YTP. So, and we like have a lot of really good sustained relationships with a lot of those youth, like, and who I miss so much.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of ways in, and I think like just basically if you stick around long enough, if you like given that work and like just still want to be part of the company, you end up in the collective.
So they would just go to the website and go to the contact section, and or is there an actual volunteer section that someone could send an email to?
You can always email info@sfmt.org, you know, and that's like the general email that you can get into, and it gets filtered through that way.
Right now, obviously, we have kind of limited volunteer opportunities since there's limited contact, but usually over the course of the year, we do find lots of things for volunteers to do.
All right, and then someone just asked, how does the mime troupe manage to rehearse while social distancing?
Just like this.
That's a good question. Yeah, we're using a platform called Discord, which is, I had never heard of it. Apparently gaming people really know it. It's for gaming. And we don't use video, we just do audio, and there's a little bit less lag on it. So we each record ourselves individually, and then, but we can hear each other. So it's still like the timing works with doing the lines, but then you record yourself individually. Yeah, sometimes it still glitches. And then
some
that
days
way,
are really bad.
That way we can kind of, we have a baseline of what it's supposed to sound like, and then we have better recordings from each of us individually. So it's a ton of work from an engineering and like editing perspective.
And just in basic communication, it's difficult sometimes because some people live in neighborhoods that are Wi-Fi challenged, so to speak. And so we'll be in the middle of a discussion and then somebody will just drop out, or, you know, so that's a challenge, but that's a challenge that everybody's experiencing right now. So
Yeah,
as
relatable.
we navigate this brave new world of this.
So we had a great question from someone who's obviously seen the live shows. They asked, the stage versions are wonderfully choreographed and the sets are beautiful. So can you please describe some of your favorite stage shows? And then how do you translate that creative kind of live theater energy into audio only?
Well, okay. Well, you start with characters, don't you? You know, and genres. You know, so genres are fun because you can create that world. You can, with sound and with how you write, how the actor delivers the line. If it's noir, and you kind of have that. Yeah, I was walking into my office that night and I saw him. You know, or completely different. So you just clearly we're not doing physical comedy, but we're trying to do that over the top characterization that you would see on the stage. But some of the work is up to you, the audience, to visualize it. So we can give you as many audio hints as possible.
Yeah, some of my favorite mime troupe shows, like the one I really love was Ripple Effect from like, I think 2016. That was all about tech and gentrification in San Francisco. And it managed to like, and I didn't work on that show, just so I'm unbiased. But it managed to incorporate all these other things into it too. Like there was a whole thing about the postal service, and there was a whole thing about just the immigrant experience of this like Vietnamese character, and just so many different things. And I think that's one thing that really translates to this year, is like that being able to like just squeak in this little commentary about other things as well. And it's the same writer, like Michael Gene Sullivan. He's been writing our shows since I think 2000. Not every single one since then, but a lot of them. Like he knows what he's doing. He's very funny, very smart person. And then the other thing that I'm excited about is my first thought was, oh, we can do fake commercials in the radio shows, and that way we can squeak in even other commentary about other things. So I'm writing the commercials, and I've been having a lot of fun doing that and trying to come up with ideas, because I have so many thoughts around, how things are commercialized and commodified and sold to us. So that's a whole other element that we get to play with that we don't usually get to.
So there will be the proverbial classic radio jingles inside of each episode.
Yep.
Already are.
Yeah. We have one in 4-part harmony in the first episode, in fact.
Very nice. So someone asked, where do you get your inspiration? And then what if troopers want to go in a different direction with themes and storylines? How do you decide, since you're a collective?
That's a good question.
Well, lots of discussion, we try to be, we're inclusive, and as we always say, particularly when we're working with our young people, all ideas are good ideas. We try to be the beta for society in a way, in terms of listening. The whole point is to listen to each other, and then to kind of extract from these different ideas and find the common ground, and how we can get a story out of that, and what is the character, that you're talking about, what is their journey, and how does it interface with other characters that might have other challenges. And so it's weaving. It really is kind of weaving. And then the stuff that is the strongest, that people feel most attached to, tends to stay, and the other stuff kind of filters away. But it's definitely collaborative. There are a lot of strong personalities in the mime troupe, needless to say. And so it can get pretty lively. The discussion can get pretty lively, but it has to be, because ultimately, whatever we put on stage, we have to feel that individually as well as collectively, we have a sense of ownership of it, of that idea and that belief. We can't go out there and do a show about something that we're not signed off on, if you know what I mean.
Right. And I think that's something, well, there's different elements. Like if someone has a very strong vision of a story, then that's usually kind of what moves forward. But then there's always the opportunity to be like, that moment, I don't really see that character saying that, or like, oh, that, I don't know if they would use this word. I think they would use that word. So I think we have a lot of like sort of editing capacity, like in our process, more so than the standard like playwriting process. Especially like I came in before as a collective member, I was like a props designer, and the fact that a props designer can say, oh, I think like this word would be better than that word, or like I didn't understand what that line was even about, and the playwright would go, oh yeah, that's a good point. I don't think that's a very common process for most theater companies.
Language and pop cultural references, because we're multi-generational. So sometimes we'll refer to something that maybe somebody else doesn't know of, or maybe sometimes I'll be writing something and Maria will look at that and go, nobody talks like that anymore. Come on. So,
Or Ellen will explain to me what the radio is and how it works.
Really, it's this little box, So yeah, and so that's part of our learning experience with each other. Because again, if we want to reach the broadest possible audience, then we have to speak in language that everybody can understand, or understand that other people talk differently.
So going back to how can the community support, we had a question from the audience. How, what do you need from the community? And that could be funds, of course. It could also be people to participate as board members. And, how can people support what you do? So we talked a little bit about the virtual hat. Other ideas, suggestions?
I think just spreading the word is great. We are on all the social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. If you're on those platforms, we're going to be putting out all our stuff on there and like sharing and getting us to a broader audience. Like Ellen said before, this is a big opportunity for us this year to like expand our reach and expand like revolutionary ideals, right? Like expand the notion that we can change the world we live in, and like that is the core of our mission. And I think if you can help us with that mission by like spreading our like sharing our stuff on social media, like following us on social media, I know that like sounds sort of silly, but that is kind of just how things are done now. So that's a big way. Just help us spread.
And also, yeah, and if you're interested in being a board member, get in touch with us, because we are looking to expand our board. Um, I think that this moment in time is really this global reset that we're in right now is an amazing opportunity for everybody to engage with each other. And I think that's one of the reasons, as Marie said, that this stuff is happening right now because we are here and suddenly people are discussing with their families and their friends and their coworkers all this stuff that is happening around us. So I would say engage in conversation and hold people's activist feet to the fire because we have a lot on our plates right now and we have a lot to do and a lot to make right. Um, and time is short, you know. We've got a planet waiting for us to get it together. We've got a lot of too many boneheaded people standing in the way, and so together, to communicate and to hold ourselves accountable to be real activists and not just mouthpieces, I think is really important.
Definitely. I think another element of it is that there's a lot of discussion right now around like how we have this extremely racist history of our country and how we've kind of allowed ourselves to forget it, and we need to like renew those discussions. And as you know, a lot, especially about white people talking to people in their family about race and police violence and abolition and all these things. And I think art can be a way to start those discussions. So if we can be useful to you in starting discussions like that, that would be great.
Sometimes one of the things we try to do when we write characters is not always to write characters really that have our point of view. It's important to be able to use the stage, or in this case, the audio stage, to represent people with different points of view. Because if you can hear that, then it helps engage in the discussion and it helps you as an individual hear where other people are coming from. You may not necessarily agree with it, but at least you have the opportunity to try to understand how people get to where they get.
And then you can dismiss it if it's just totally dumb. But not necessarily. Maybe you can radicalize your grandma. You never know. You ought to try.
You never know where the point of entry is,
Right. Well, I think that's a good place to end it. So just once again, everyone, please tune in at 5 o'clock on 4th of July, KSFP 102.5 for the little box that is the radio, as Marie has now learned. And then you can also stream at sfpublicpress.org/KSFP. So live stream it that way as well. And then I think it's also going to be, this will be recorded and put into and published as a show prior to the broadcast. And then prior to that will be my Voices of the Community interview with Michael Sullivan. So thanks everybody for tuning in today. And I'm going to turn it back to Lila.
Yes, George, Ellen, Marie, thank you so much. We really appreciated having all of you here. And thanks to our audience members, we had some great questions come in. If you'd like to follow the Mime Troupe on social media, Daphne and I put all of the links in the chat. You can check those out. I also included the full upcoming schedule related to the Mime Troupe. As George said, this webinar is going to be turned into a civic show, which will air for the first time tomorrow night, Wednesday at 6 p.m. It will rebroadcast Thursday morning at 8 a.m. And then on Saturday, there's going to be a whole sequence of programs. George's Voices of the Community will be at 4 p.m., followed by the rebroadcast of the civic episode of this webinar at 4:30, the premiere of Voices of the Resistance at 5, and then that show will air again immediately following at 5:30. And that whole 2-hour sequence will air again Sunday morning beginning at 8 a.m. And I believe we're going to do another rebroadcast the following weekend. And we're going to help promote this. And we're really excited to be partnering through KSFP. Also, the KSFP stream is available on ksfp.fm as well. Thanks everyone for being here today. We look forward to seeing you at future events.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Stay well. Thanks everybody. Good to see you.
Thanks everyone.
So to speak.
Virtually.
virtually.